Hello, hello. Welcome to the Story Darlings podcast. I'm Sandra.
And I'm Tera.
What are we talking about today, Tera?
So we are talking about the first half of A Court of Mist and Fury.
Ooh. This was a chunky book, and so the first half is pretty chunky. It's like 32 chapters. Just if this is your first time tuning in or you're finding us on this specific episode, just know that this is going to be full of spoilers. We previously did a Throne of Glass series read along, so there might be like some light spoilery stuff too that comes up in discussion, so just kind of be aware of that. But definitely go back and take a listen if you're reading either series. So do we want to talk about how the first book ended, like with Feyre under the mountain and kind of the big thing that happened there before jumping in?
Yeah, so if you have not listened to the episode about A Court of Thorns and Roses, this is definitely going to give away the end of that book. But so we end that book with Feyre basically dying to set the Fae Kingdom free from Amarantha and finding the answer to the riddle, which is love, and then seeing her reborn or remade by the Fae High Lords. So each one of the High Lords gave her a little bitty piece of themselves to then make her alive, unalived her.
Sounds like some zombie talk or something. Yes. And then she returns to Spring Court with her beau, Tamlin. And then A Court of Mist and Fury opens up, and it has been 3 months since the events of Under the Mountain. Feyre is suffering from flashbacks and PTSD, really. She's having bad nightmares. She is severely depressed. She isn't eating. And she just seems kind of lost and directionless, really. Like she doesn't really have a purpose, and she doesn't feel like she's adding value to anything. We immediately meet a new character named Ianthe. Is that her name? Ianthe? Mm-hmm. And she is one of 12 high priestesses. So that's kind of new lore that's been introduced to the world building. And there will be a little bit more around that a little later. But Ianthe is not very trustworthy. Like anyone that's new, Feyre doesn't really trust her. And Ianthe has tasked herself with planning for the wedding, which Feyre is fine with. You want to talk about her experience and kind of all the stuff happening in the Spring Court?
So Feyre has now become Fae. So she now fits in with their world. But everybody in the Spring Court treats her a little differently. They treat her like, I want to say almost respect, but to the point that it's like bothersome to Feyre. Like they know that she freed them from not only Amarantha, but also the curse that they were under that forced them to wear masks. And so they are just kind of, I don't know a way to phrase that, but like a little step above worship, I think. And Feyre doesn't like that because Feyre, again, is reliving the bad times, what she had to do to get to the point of freeing them. And so she doesn't think that she's worthy of that. She is quite frankly just broken from everything that happened to her. And she's trying to move on. But at every turn, she is being kind of blocked by Tamlin and Lucien from growing and from moving on. So
it's really sad. If I had to put a word to like the first part of this book, it'd really be just a lot of loss and soul searching for Feyre. Tam and Lucien have been off a lot because there's still a lot of fallout to deal with from Amarantha's death. She still has her henchmen and creatures that are lost that they need to hunt down. The adder being one of them. It escaped in the stuff from Under the Mountain. And it's just, you're in Feyre's headspace and you feel bad for her. Even her birthday comes, the winter solstice. She doesn't tell a single soul that it's her birthday. And it's just another day to her. And you just feel bad for her. And as her wedding day gets closer, she could not give a shit less for anything about it. The color of flowers, you know, her wedding dress. And then it comes to her wedding day and she becomes very desperate. She's like walking down the aisle in a ridiculous dress. I'm like imagining just the poofiest, ugliest, like birthday cake looking dress or something. And you want to talk about what happens?
So she is walking down the aisle and she is trying to think like about what she wants. And she ends up kind of begging to have this stop because at this point she is seeing how Tamlin is like kind of keeping her locked away and not letting her go out. And that is one thing that she is having severe PTSD about because she was locked under the mountain when Amarantha was giving her her trials. And so that's one thing that she cannot stand is being locked up. And so she is kind of regretting being in this position of a wedding to Tamlin. And we'd also gotten introduced to the tithe before this. And so she's also kind of like, is he a person I want to be with? Because this tithe is not necessarily something she agrees with.
It's a very Robin Hood kind of scene, right? Where the king, or was it the king in that story, or the prince, or whatever? He's like getting his
Nottingham.
10% from everyone that can't afford it. And there was a scene in particular with like a little water fae, like a gray creature, who did not have enough fish in the pond. Like the pond was tapped out of fish, and she didn't have anything to donate. And Tamlin's just like, "Well, you have 3 days," just being very hard nosed about it, not having any morsel of empathy whatsoever. And Feyre kind of follows her out and gives her the jewels that she's wearing to be able to, take care of her and her, water sisters and stuff.
I got very Selena vibes off of that because like
Mm-hmm.
Selena did whatever she could to help other people. So I bet that is going to come back and repay Feyre in the end.
We will see. Yeah.
Finding people and being nice to people because she has a lot of that. Like she's nice to everybody. She wants to have a fair world where everybody can succeed. And so, yeah. So she is sitting here wishing that she didn't have to say yes and about to tell Tamlin no, that she wasn't going to marry him. And in walks Rhysand. And he's like, "Hey, it's about that time. Like you have like the bargain. You have to spend a week with me." And he picked that time because he could hear Feyre over the bond that they have from their bargain that she didn't want to do this. And so he picked that time to be like, "Hey, you know what? We struck a bargain. You have to come live with me for a week." And I get a kick out of Feyre and Rhys together because he is so like just snarky one-linery with her just to get like a little bit of emotion out of her. And he's like trying to pull her out of her broken state. And I love that because I think Tamlin was trying to put her back in her box as opposed to Rhys who's trying to pull her out and be like, "Hey, live. Like, come on."
It's after Feyre has gone away to the night court and she's spent some time with Rhysand and she's really reflecting on her relationship with Tamlin. She has this notion that Tamlin just stopped trying. Like all he cared about was getting his full power back, getting full control over his lands. And then as soon as he got that from Feyre, he just stopped trying and felt like he was more just entitled to certain things. And so she has the idea like, okay, he was the first creature, human, whatever type of creature that showed me kindness after I had this horrible life. Is that why I was drawn to him? So she kind of starts second guessing things and just doing a lot of soul searching in that way.
Yeah, and during these parts in the book, I was trying to like figure out what Tamlin's motives were because on one side you can think that he was trying to keep her safe because he knows that the danger that's out there for her because we discover that she has gotten the powers from all 7 of these high lords that gave her a piece of themselves to bring her back to life. And so Tamlin is trying to like tap that down so that nobody else can find it. And we find out even later in the book that there is something that she can do because of those powers. And so I'm sitting here thinking, is Tamlin doing this for her good? Or is Tamlin trying to keep her like, I don't know, almost Stockholm syndrome-y, keep her tied to him and only him so that she can't get out? Like, is he a narcissist, like abuser? Or is he really trying to protect her? And I don't know which side I'm coming down on, I'm leaning more towards the narcissistic abuser right now, just based off of like how he treated her further on in the chapter.
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
didn't know at that point in time how to take what he was doing.
The question that comes up for me is I don't know if Tamlin really knows what love is, like
Mhm.
selfless love. And I don't remember who said it. It might have been like Moore or something, but they say love can be a poison too. Do you remember that conversation in the book when they were talking about Tamlin? So it's almost like everything that he experienced growing up, and then with the curse and everything that was at stake, it's just his idea of what love is just got really warped. And he's almost like self righteous in that kind of way in what he believes love is. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we see the juxtaposition to Reese, who is like, grow, be who you want to be. You are free over here. Do what you
Make
want to do.
mistakes. Yeah.
Make mistakes. Like, yell at me if you want to. Call me a bastard. Call me a prick. Like, do what you want to do. You're free. And he really wants her to learn to read, which we discover is more for a bigger benefit, but he wants her to learn to read and to try and tap into these powers and to grow in them so that she can protect herself and not just, oh, poor pitiful me, I'm a damsel in distress over here. And so you see that with Reese, and I mean, it just makes Tamlin look even worse in my
Yeah.
impression.
Yeah. I think it was Reese talking about how when Tamlin and his court was under that spell, how Tamlin sat on his ass for 50 years not doing anything and just sending out, people that in his group to go die instead of like trying to figure out any other path to beat this thing.
Yes. And you see again the juxtaposition to Reese, who did everything in his power to save his city and his friends, including things that he really, really did not want to be doing, which is becoming the whore of Amarantha. And that's hard to say.
Yes. So Feyre goes off to Night Court to begin this bargain with Rhysand, and she's very much like when she was a human going off to the Spring Court. She's very suspicious of everything. Everything that she's heard about the Night Court is they are bad, they're evil, they do horrible things. And so she's expecting a very under the mountain type of place full of horrors, really. And then she goes to Night Court, and it's this beautiful palace in the mountains, basically, that goes through like the full seasons, full times of day, and everything. And Reese kind of just lets her have a very luxurious room and is just like, do whatever you want, take a bath, relax, learn this. He eat, yeah, put on some weight. You're like skin and bones. And so her very first week is very disorienting. She doesn't really trust them. She doesn't know whether it's a trap. And Rhysand kind of eases her into Night Court because she only meets Morgan
Mm-hmm.
at that point. You want to talk a little bit about Moore?
So Moore is Reese's cousin, which is a very loose cousin in both senses of the word, I guess. But so she is very open with who she is and very like unapologetic about it. And she wants to befriend Feyre because they've both been in situations, as we learn in the later on in this part, where they didn't have control because they were women. They had no control over what's happening to them. And so I think Moore finds herself in Feyre, like sees herself and sees when she was broken and wants to help her. But she is very, very sassy, very, very much can hold her own against everybody, even though, I mean, Rhys is the most powerful High Lord ever in Perinthian. So in the history of Perinthian, he's the most powerful High Lord. And she holds her own with him even. And so very badass.
Comparing Night Court and Spring Court, I mean, everyone bows down to Tamlin. His word is the word. No one can have any other say against it. And then you go to Night Court, and Rhysand is like, I'm going to give my 2 cents, but it's up to you guys to agree or what. Just, I want everyone to vocalize their opinion on it. And then we'll all collectively weigh in on next steps type of thing.
Well, and there's that same kind of a thing with how Feyre is treated. Like, she is worried about how the people of the night court are going to be treating her. And they're like very respectful, but also let her do her own thing. I envision this like a celebrity, you know, how some fans are like, I want a picture autograph, like whatever, even when they're trying to like have dinner with their family, right? That's what the Spring Court did to Feyre. Whereas there are some fans that are like, okay, when you're available, we'll do this. And like, I'll thank you or whatever. But they're not intrusive with that. And so that's what I feel like there's like a difference between that, even in the way Feyre is treated too.
Needless to say, Rhysand's popping into the wedding, crashing the wedding, and winnowing her away is just what the doctor ordered, because they spend the time together there, her learning to read, and it's like the cutest scene. Like, we thought the scene with Tamlin trying to, help out with difficult words was kind of cute back then, making little soliloquies or whatever. But Rhysand is being like, Rhysand is the most handsome High Lord. Rhysand is...
And making her write these, like, kids used to get in trouble, and so they had to write on the chalkboard over and over and over and over. He's making her do that, and then he's also making her do shield practice, because he can still get into her mind, and so she can put up a shield over that so that people can't get into her mind. And so he's making her like put it up and down, over and over and over.
You get the sense that Feyre is just projecting so much internal dialogue so loudly all the time with the way that he has her training to shield,
Yes. Well, he even admits it. Like, he hasn't been able to sleep in the last 3 months because she has been projecting her images through her dreams on him. And so he is like having to relive this nightmare that she is doing, but also seeing her vomiting up her guts every morning.
Meanwhile, Tamlin's just like sleeping through the night, totally
Yes.
oblivious. Just
see, this is again why I am liking Tamlin less and less and less. Because if I'm puking up my guts, Justin better be right there beside me, because if he's not, there might be a pillow over his face in the morning.
Oh, I love it.
Like, if I have to be up, you have to be up.
Yes.
But he better not wake me up if he's vomiting. Okay?
Yes.
Be quiet about that shit.
Oh, yeah. So all this time is passing, and they start figuring out that because of her being remade into a High Fae from all of the different High Lords, that she now possesses power from all of them, and she has absolutely no control over it. Whenever she gets emotional, different ones just manifest. So I think one of the early ones was with when she's sent back to Spring Court, and you want to talk about it?
So she's sent back to Spring Court, and there's like this little interrogation scene.
Yeah.
Between Tamlin. Like, Tamlin's like, okay, I need you to tell me everything. Because we find out that nobody has seen the Night Court and made it out. Because it is a very secret place. And so he's like, I need you to tell me everything. And so one of the things she tells him is, Rhysand said that there's war coming. And Tamlin's like, oh, no, there's not. Like, you don't need to be doing this stuff. There's not going to be a war, blah, blah, blah. Which, to me, it's like, well, what do you know that nobody else knows? Like, are you in league with them, and so you don't think that there's going to be war? Like, what's going on? But we see her get into a fight with them, like with him and Lucian, and she uses like the heat, right, on the table. But there's another one that she uses too. What's the other one? Is it strength?
She pops into his head.
Lucian's head. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, so she mind walks into his head, which is Rhys's power. And she also, when she looks down, she sees that she had singed the table from where she was holding it. And so that is a power from the Summer Court.
Or Autumn Court? Is that Lucian's father?
Maybe it was Autumn Court. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so first off, it's interesting because Tamlin and Lucian, they interrogate her and expect her to act like a mole and report back, as you said. And then on the other side, Rhys is like, hey, can you talk to them and see if Spring Court would be willing to go into an alliance with Night Court. So Rhysand is trying to approach this from a partnership perspective, like let's team up about this stuff that's surely building with Hybern. And then that's just another way of showing the opposite happening with how Tamlin works, right? But and then it's the same thing with Feyre's power. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the argument that she got into, I just remembered, was her and Tamlin arguing over the Wraith and her being kind to her at the tithes, because he's like, you just made me look weak, basically. And she's like, I don't think kindness is weakness.
Yeah.
Like, you can be kind to your people and still be the leader. You don't have to rule with uncaring. And so they got into a little bit of fight, and she mind walked and singed their table.
And she showed like a lot of strength too when she was training over in Night Court. So it's just all of these different things are starting to come out.
And speed. She got speed too at this point. She's very quick.
So she gets locked up in the Spring Court Manor because Tamlin is like, I'm going off to the western border, like the border of the continent, because there's some stuff happening there. And as we know, politically, Hybern is located on an island continent off of the western border. And so Tamlin is being very hush hush, not sharing any information about what's going on. And he's just like, I'm going. Feyre wants to go. She will not accept no as an answer and says she is going. And then Tamlin fucking locks her in there. And then, as Tera said, she has a like breakdown because it's very under the mountain flashbacks, her being locked up, imprisoned. And she like wraps herself in darkness. So she like kind of shows that power too before being winnowed out.
And there was another power before her second trip to Rhys's place that she exhibits, which is she kind of calls out Tamlin about his treatment of her and how she's drowning because he won't let her out, and she always has guards around her and everything. And he explodes, and she puts a shield over herself.
Yeah.
To protect her from his power. And that's one of his powers, is the shielding, which he uses against her later. But that was right before her second trip to Rhys's. And then she goes to Rhys's. And again, she is treated like a person. She is let roam. She is let, learn and explore and all of those things. But then when she gets back, she's treated as the spy and can't go anywhere. And then she grows claws during one argument with not Rhys, with Tamlin. And Lucian notices, and he's like, we've got to start letting her do things.
Train, yeah.
Tamlin's like, no. And then he locks her in the house. And that is her, like, breaking point, is being locked up. And so then we meet Mor again, because Rhys sends Mor to get her out of there. She's scaring all of the, like, servants, and even Alice helps Mor get her out because she is locked in this house. All the, like, avenues of escape are gone, and she is now cloaked herself in darkness, which again is Rhys's power. And Mor goes in and finds her and like picks her up, and she's like, we're getting out. And then she goes back to Rhys, and she's like, basically, why did Rhys not come? Why did Mor? And he's like, well, if I had stepped in and taken you, then he would be able to attack my lands. But
Yes.
Mor can step in and not, garner that right on behalf of Tamlin.
Yeah, Rhysand is very much thinking strategically. Like, he doesn't want to start any unnecessary, wars or skirmishes. But then it's a subsequent visit to the Night Court. Rhys is like, okay, you want to leave the palace and go visit? Like, I'll show you a place. And he shows her the city of Valaris, or the City of Dreams. And it's kind of, I'm trying to think of like a city that it kind of encapsulates, but there's just like an art district, there's a bunch of cafes and patio restaurants, and just a
like
very
Paris.
vibrant, yes, like a very beautiful place.
City of Lights too. Like when they go to his first house, and then they go to his second house, and the second house is like built into a mountain.
The House
And
of
when
Wind.
when they fly up, like she can see all of the lights of the city, And she's like, it's like very pretty. And so, yeah, I was envisioning like a Paris with all the lights and like the art districts and the, museums and theaters and all the stuff.
I love the scene where he took her to the House of Wind to meet the rest of his inner circle, and so we
Mm-hmm.
meet the two Bat Boys. So there's Azrael and Cassian, and they are Illyrian warriors. So they have wings just like Rhysand, but Rhysand is half Illyrian. And so Azrael is the spy master. He's something called a shadow singer. He has these scarred, brutalized hands from some terrible childhood trauma that we can get into. And then there's Cassian, who's kind of the commander of all of Rhysand's armies. And then we meet a creature, a fabulous creature named Amren.
Yes. And so Amren was really cool to me because, again, I feel like that's a callback to Throne of Glass because we don't know what Amren is. But further on in this part, Rhys says that Amren came over like a very, very, very long time ago when there were like basically rips in the time continuum kind of thing. So she came over from a different world. And I got very like the not word stones. What are those called?
Um,
The
I think,
portals, word portals
yeah,
or whatever.
word gates.
Word gates,
Word.
yes. So I got very word gate vibes off of that. Like somebody was opening up a portal and she came in and she also has silver eyes, which we met a goddess in Throne of Glass with silver eyes before. So I'm like, and she's super, super powerful. And she drinks blood, which is also creepy. Like, is she a
Mhm.
vampire?
I think she just terrifies everyone, really.
Yeah.
Right? Well, they're like very grateful that she's on their side. But
Yes.
yes, the silver-eyed
And
Amren. Hmm.
and so Amren is number 2 to Rhys. Number 3 is Morgan, so more. And then like the boys are like 4 and 5, I guess, but like under the women, which I like too. Like
Under the women.
he like respects women, whereas it doesn't seem like very many of the other like kingdom like courts or anything respect women, especially the night court, like the night court that he like houses under the mountain, not his true court, but like the
It's
one that he's
his
like, you know
shadow
what, I
court
let you
almost.
exist so that you take like you distract people from what I'm doing over here.
Yeah.
um because that's where Moore grew up, and she tells Feyre the story of her growing up, which is that basically the women's virginity is auctioned off to the highest bidder in their like court, and they have no say in it. And when she was little, she became very, very powerful very quickly, and so everybody wanted hers, and she was basically tormented and sold. And so it's a very sad lot for women. So I'm very proud of Rhys for understanding the worth beyond breeding of a woman.
Yes. Rhys just
Because
respects them and gives them equal footing, right? And positions
mhm,
of power. So it's like you can make excuses for Tamlin all day because of, who his father and brothers were and how they treated people. But then you see, okay, Rhysand and his bad boys, they come from Illyrian culture. And
mhm.
an Illyrian culture is very misogynistic. They treat women horribly, cutting off their wings, making them, serve them. And they don't treat women that way.
Yeah, they
Rhysand.
snip like women's wings when they first bleed. They like just snip apart, kind of like what we do to chickens, I guess, to make sure that they can't fly.
Yeah.
But they like snip them, and that was happening to Reese's mom when his dad met her. And his dad was super powerful, much like Reese's, and he was like, and everybody that was around her just like misted, which I picture like just this gross, like turning into like blood. Like they just turned into people mist, which is disgusting. But that was one of Reese's dad's powers that Reese has, is he can turn people into people mist.
Yeah.
So wonderful upbringing that Reese had.
Yeah. I mean,
Which I guess he did have a fairly good one because it sounds like his mother was fairly nice to him.
Yes, she was like that shine, that light for him.
Yes.
And he didn't get the same story from Asriel, who
Uh,
was basically locked up his entire life and had nothing but the shadows.
and
Yeah.
his older brothers tortured him,
Yeah.
and his parents didn't give a crap. And then the same for Cassian. He was not treated well either, and that's where they found each other. All three being treated fairly poorly, and they found a brotherhood between them.
We love
So
our
they
bad
had sympathy.
boys.
Yes.
Yes.
And we
Yeah.
also find out that when Amryn comes in, she notices something about Feyre, which is that Feyre was made. That's what they call it, is made. So instead of being born Fae, she was made Fae. And there have only ever been 3 people made. One being Amryn, and basically they locked her up into like a Fae body because she was so powerful, like it took some of her power away to be in Fae, I guess. I don't know. And then there was another lady that was given long life, but not made a true Fae. And then now Feyre is a true Fae made from a human. So I think that that is going to be important in the future too.
Yes. So we have them working with Feyre to make sure she's literate now, that she can control her powers more. And then once she starts turning more toward Rhysand and the Night Court, she wants to actively start working on missions and helping them with gaining information, whatever. So she becomes kind of a plant in Spring Court, like reporting back on things and that sort of business.
So Rhys explains that the King of Hybern is actively trying to start a war. Like he is preparing for a war. And so they need to prepare. And one of the ways they can prepare is by getting more information, which can be given to them by the bone carver. But the bone carver doesn't like to speak to people. He doesn't allow a whole lot of people in his prison. So they're like, oh, well, we can bring Feyre because she's new to him. He might speak to her. And Feyre's like, I don't know that I want to be the pawn in this thing. And so Amryn gives her a necklace and she's like, well, this is a necklace that helped me get out. And Feyre's like, oh, okay, like I can always get out of the prison because that's one of the reasons she doesn't want to go back in, is she doesn't want to be locked in there and prisoner, basically. And so off Rhys and Feyre go into this prison to talk to this bone carver, which is just a very, very creepy scene because she views him as like an 8-year-old boy and he's asking all these questions about what's it like to die and like what happened and blah blah blah. And he's like, I'll give you an answer to a question if you give me an answer to a question. So he's like really digging in, and Feyre's trying to get answers from him about like what's going on. And so he ends up giving them answers that there was a cauldron which held all of the magic of the world or whatever, and it was hidden, and now the King of Hybern is trying to find it. And there were little like parts to the bottom of it, so like its little like legs or whatever, that were cut off, and those were held in the temples, but we know that the temples were being sacked, and so they're figuring out that this cauldron is being put back together, and it is something that he can break the wall to the human world with.
If you remember from the first book, A Court of Thorns and Roses, when Feyre just got to the manor, she was exploring the rooms and there was the tapestry on the wall that showed kind of the history of the early world with the cauldron lore and how the magic kind of was dispersed. So it's kind of that world building now coming into play as major plot threads happening. And so they learned from the bone carver that after Amarantha died, her necklace and her ring, which held Durian's finger bone and his eyeball, which housed some of his soul, his essence, has gone missing, along with the adder that went missing. And so Hybern is believed to have these pieces of jewelry in possession so that he can obtain the cauldron again. But to put it back together, along with getting these pieces that the high priestesses have been tasked with protecting, is they also need what's called the Book of Breathings. And that's kind of this old text, this old ancient text that is able to use the cauldron. Yeah.
So isn't that the book that can nullify the cauldron too?
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and they're wanting to use the cauldron to bring Jurian back to life, aren't they?
Probably. I can't remember
Yeah.
if Bone Carver said he was alive already or
Well,
not.
because they asked him, "Can you bring somebody back to life
Yeah.
if you have a finger bone?" And the bone carver's like, "Well, do you have a part of their soul?" And they were like, "Yes." And they're like, "Well, no." The bone carver did, and then he's like, "Unless you have the cauldron." And then he went into the story about the cauldron. And then he was like, "And by the way, the cauldron can also like bring down this, but there's a book that can nullify it, and the book can only be wielded or read by somebody who's been made." So there's another part where Feyre is like key to everything going on is that she has been made so she can wield this book that can undo the cauldron.
And they've found that the book was, split into two. And so the mortal queens have one half, and then the High Lord, Tarquin is his name, of the Summer Court is protecting the other half. And so that's how they've kind of been controlling anyone getting hold of this power.
And in this process, we see Feyre get another power when she, well, I guess it's not another power, but one grows because she accidentally mind walks into Rhys's mind. And he's like, "What the fuck? How did you do that?" And she's like, "I don't know. It just happened." And he's like, my shields were up. How did you do that?" And so we see her getting powerful and powerful.
Which is exciting.
Yes.
She's like, "I have no idea what I'm going to do with this power, but it's there.
It's here.
So let's use it."
And then we pass on to another kind of task that Rhys needs her to do, which is to visit the Weaver. And Azriel and Cassian are like, "What the hell? Like, you can't take her to the Weaver." And she's like, "Why not?" Like, what?
They're just like,
You're scaring
really?
me.
Everyone's just like looking at each other behind her back.
Yes.
Like, really? But it's a test, right?
I'm really liking the relationship that they have, which is just funny because they're all like very snarky, very sarcastic, and like I love it. But anyway, yes, so it's kind of a test to see if she has the ability to find something that was lost by somebody in like one of the people that gave her their essence. And so Rhys has lost something and the Weaver has it. And so he sends her into the Weaver's house to find this something and to see if she can find it. Because when they go and get the book from the Summer Court, she is going to have to find the book, and it is owned by Tarquin, who she has an essence of. So they're like, maybe she'll be able to find it. I mean, she is like playing all the parts for this team right now.
Metal detector, shield, yeah, everything.
Like the person that's going to be able to read the damn book, the
Yeah.
person with a connection to the like human kingdom, like it's like they're relying on Feyre for every little thing at this point. But anyway, so she goes to the Weaver's house, and I don't know about you, but like as they're describing this house and her, I'm sitting here like with a Hansel and Gretel like in my mind that she's going to the little witch's house. And
it's creepy.
Yes.
Well, first off, Feyre comes into the wood, right? And there's like this homey looking little cottage. And she's like, "Oh, this is very sweet. This is cute," because no one's told her like the fucking truth of what's in this thing. And she hears singing, and it's this creepy ass song about one sister killing the other sister and someone finding the body, turning it into a violin.
Ooh.
It's a very creepy song. But she finds the ring, and you want to talk about what happens?
So she finds the ring, and she's like, "Oh, okay, maybe I can." And so she picks it up, and then the Weaver, who is blind, apparently feels that, like, one of her hoarding things has gone missing. And so she's like, "Wait, who's in my house?" And Feyre's like, oh shit. So she tries to escape. But the witch or the weaver, I'm calling her witch now that I've like said the witch from Hansel and Gretel. But anyway, so the weaver shuts all the doors and the windows and locks her in. And she's like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
House of Horrors now.
Yes. And then she's like, okay, well, like I'll go up the chimney. And then she gets stuck in there. And like as she was sitting there like trying to find the rings, she saw the weaver like weaving this like wool looking stuff, and she's like, but that's not wool, like what is that? And I think she put two and two together that that's like made out of humans or made out of like things that the weaver has killed. So she's deathly afraid that the weaver is going to turn her into like the wool. And so she goes up this chimney and she's like, ew, it's really greasy. And then she's like, do I even want to know what this grease is? And it's basically body fat, right? Like that had been like stuck up the chimney. But anyway, so she's trying to go up this chimney and she gets stuck. And she's like, shit. And the witch or the weaver is like clawing at her and trying to get her. And so she like uses her strength and punches like basically a brick out of place and throws it at the weaver. And now the weaver's getting really mad. And Feyre's like trying to get out, and she finally gets out. And she gets on the roof and she's like covered in this like grease from the chimney. And on the roof, it is made out of hair instead of like thatching. And so she's getting this hair stuck to her. And she is now like livid. She's like, I hate you. I hate everybody because now I'm covered in like basically human fat and hair that this weaver had turned into.
No, yeah, not even just
roof.
hair. It's like the scalped head hair.
Yes.
It's just disgusting. But do we want to talk about how the weaver's blood was black when she busted her face open with that brick?
Which I didn't catch on to that. So
it was black.
Very Vogue-like.
Very Vogue-like. So we don't know. We just were introduced to all these creatures, and even Amarin is a kind of creature. And all we know is they're very ancient, and we have no fucking idea like what they really are. And
yes.
But at least she has the ring.
And then Rhys showed up and he's like, I was here the whole time, basically. And she's like, I hate you. Get me home now. And so she goes home and they like meet with Rhys and Cassian. And this is where we hear more story, and that Rhys, we meet with Cassian and Azriel. And this is where we hear the story of Mor, where Rhys and Cassian saved her. So these, like, we're building this why they have such a strong connection up with all these little stories.
We also find out exactly how big of a choice it was whenever Rhysand became Amarantha's whore, because he shares the memory of Ianthe or whatever. I can't say her name. And yes. Talk about that scene.
So I'm gonna backtrack a little, because we see a very cute scene between her and Rhys where he gets a little jealous and basically offers up Cassian for sex with Feyre. and like he gets jealous of her, being like, oh, okay, I might take you up on that offer. And he's like, wait, what? Like, no. But then he gives her the memory of what he experienced, and we see why what he gave for his city in becoming Amarantha's whore, why it was so important to him. Because we see that Ianthe, yeah, tried seducing him. Like, she's like butt naked in his bed, like just like, here I am, please come. And
like you wouldn't do the same thing waiting to read that.
Well, I wouldn't try and force him into it, okay?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I might be open and available, but I would not try to force him into it. Thank you very much, Sandra.
Yeah, Tara's a good girl.
But anyway, so she is trying to like force him into having sex with her, and she goes to grab him, and he like uses his power and like starts breaking things in her hand, and she's screaming, and he like kicks her out with his powers, and it's great. But then you see Feyre being like, Lucien didn't like her. I wonder if she forced herself onto Lucien, and he didn't have the power to stop her. And so you see, I think at the first, Feyre likes Ianthe a little bit because it was a friend, and kind of like what she experienced with Tamlin. Like, this is the first person that was nice to her. And so she latched on. But then you see her like realizing, okay, maybe this person wasn't a good person. And like maybe I should have been more picky with my friends. And, being like, Moore was more of a friend to her than Ianthe has been. And so she's realizing that there's more to being a friend than just somebody who's around.
Feyre made a comment that Ianthe and Tamlin look like they would have made a really good couple because they're both, sun-kissed and blonde, and Ianthe was just very eager to help out and, help counsel.
Probably been eager to help out
Oh,
Tamlin too.
yes. So there's just a lot of, I'm sure Feyre feels, she has her complex feelings about Tamlin, because she did love him, but it's very complicated kind of love. And so she still wants the best for him. Like, she doesn't want anyone taking advantage of that. So, but we should talk about the trip that they do to the Mortallands to go see the sisters to help, in the next step of this process and trying to figure out what the King of Hybern is up to with all of these magical artifacts and stuff. She does pay a visit to her sister Nesta and Elaine in their little wealthy mansion. And what's new with them? What's going on over there?
So Nesta is still not married. So woohoo, she did not marry Thomas. But Elaine is engaged. And she is engaged to a Fae-hating, like, person's son. And so her ring that she got from them is iron, even though they know that iron does nothing to Fae. And so Feyre comes in, and at first Nesta's like, no, we're not going to help you. But then Elaine's like, hey, she did a lot for us, so I think we should help her. And because Elaine says it, I think Nesta's like, okay, fine, we'll do it. And so they stay in the manor overnight so that they can then write the queens a letter to ask for their help with giving them the book so that they can put both pieces together, right? And so they have this family dinner, and Rhys and Cassian and Asriel are all there, and along with her sisters. And it's very dysfunctionally funny. Because the chairs can't hold their wings, so they're like very uncomfortable in these like human chairs. And then Cassian is just trying to get a rise out of Nesta, and like I got the sense that he was like I fucking her the whole time too, which really like just irritated Nesta because she's like, yeah, right, dude, leave me alone.
Dream on, yeah.
And then Asriel is just over here trying to keep the peace and like being like a shy good boy, while his like shadows are like swirling him, And I'm like, so Cassian's openly trying to like cause a rift, and Asriel, who looks like he would probably be the one that like is the scary ass person, is over here trying to like keep the peace. And Feyre is over here like not eating her food because it doesn't taste right. And Rhys is like, well, our like if you ever came to our world, like you would understand, and like trying to be nice. And it was just so
yeah. Nesta's just like something wrong with her food.
Yeah. And then at the end, Nesta's like, well, if you're not going to eat, then like dinner's over. Go to your beds. And they asked for 2 rooms adjoining with 2 beds. And Elaine's like our rooms with 2 beds aren't adjoining. And like, I think she was like, they're going to kill me because our rooms aren't adjoining. And Rhys is like, that'll be fine. Like, it'll be okay. And it was just very dysfunctional.
I love that scene too. It was so funny because Nesta is just like, she's going to be her own person no matter what. You're not going to get a different version of Nesta no matter what. And then Elaine is so easily swayed. Like, she's so afraid of Fae kind now, even though I don't know if you were getting this kind of vibe too, but in Twilight, whenever Bella was turned into a vampire and she's like very like worried about seeing any of her human family or friends and stuff. And it was kind of like the same thing leading up to this whole problem, like with Feyre, like, oh, I'm coming back high Fae and they're going to know, blah, blah, blah. So there was that too. And then there was the scene with the adder. So let's talk about what happened there, because Rhysand suspected something was going to happen. So what goes on?
So this is a part where I'm like, Rhysand, like, fill people in, because it feels like he's just, like, setting her up for so many failures and, like, "Well, you'll either succeed or die." And I'm like,
Yes.
"Come on, dude, like, that's not how you do this." But anyway, another succeed or die thing was set up by Reese, which he suspected that the adder was coming after Feyre, and he was right. And so Feyre, like, gets captured by the adder, and he's kidnapping her, and he's like, "Either hold still or I'll break your neck." And he's taking her to the King of Hybern because the King of Hybern wanted her. And this is the part where she also gets another power, and she winnows, which is basically walking, like, not time warp, but
Through
like
folds.
space, yeah, space
Mhm.
warp. And so she ends up back somewhere else away from him. And Reese and Az come and capture the adder too and
It doesn't end well
torture
for
the
him.
crap out of it. Yeah. And get all their answers as to why he was coming after Feyre and what's going on. And we find out that the king knows that they're looking for the book, and then also that Feyre is the one that can be used to use the book. So bad news bears there for everybody. And then because she did such a piss poor job defending herself, she takes Cassian up on his offer to train her. And that's a funny couple of scenes because it reminded me of the scene of Kale and Dorian like running in Throne of Glass where all of the girls were like just staring at him like because that is basically what Feyre is doing. She's taking a break from like her training with Cassian and she is like staring Reese and Azriel down because they got their shirts off and she's like, ooh. And she looks over at Cassian and she's like, I don't think because Cassian like makes this offhanded comment about how out of shape Reese is, and she's like, I don't think he was looking at the same things I was looking
It's funny.
at.
And she sees their tattoos too, and she realizes that the bargain tattoo that she has is the same as these Illyrian warrior tattoos, which I don't
Are
know.
good luck tattoos
Yeah.
for Illyrian warriors. And she's like, oh, he gave me a good luck tattoo. And she's
Uh-huh.
noticing all the little things that he did, which is like bet on her to win and then also give her a good luck. And like those little things that she didn't know, like she thought that it was like a bitch move back then. But now she's like, oh, he was actually like trying to get me to like face things and to,
Yeah.
trying to empower me. Which another part of that, like she, during the bone carver time, she had to admit that she wanted to die, that she was about to kill herself after like she killed the fairies. Like that made her want to die. And so after she saved the fairy kingdom, she was going to turn the knife on herself if it had not been Tamlin as the third person. And that hits Reese really, really hard. And he basically tells the bone carver he can't have any more answers. Like that's it. But she keeps going.
The whole bone carver scene takes Farah to a very, very dark place. But Rhysand, he starts explaining little by little, like the small things that he did to try and make Farah want to survive and want to wake up that next morning, such as he's the one that sent the music playing whenever she was like in the little dungeon cell, and just like little things like this. He was still very much enthralled to Amarantha with his powers somewhat suppressed, but he did what he could in a way that wouldn't give it away and get himself or anyone that he cared about in trouble. So, but you just get the sense and see that he has backed up his promises forever. That's just who he is, protecting the people of Valaris from Amarantha for so long. And that's just such a stark difference from Tamlin.
And then you see like a little bit of flirting between Reese
Oh,
and
yeah.
Feyre. And that they're writing little notes that disappear. So it's very much like a text, but like on
Yeah.
actual pieces of paper. And so she's like writing notes, and there's one about like him something about licking, and she's like, well, I seem to remember you're not very good at that.
He's like licking her tears.
Yes. And he's like, well, what part of me do you want to lick? Or she asks him or something. I don't remember how it went, but there is some heavy flirtation going on.
Every
And
time she screams at him that he's a pig, it cracked me up. Like, just pig, and yeah.
yeah. So we end this one on a little bit of a high note. Everybody's a little happy. Moore and everybody have been going out drinking and carousing and things. And you see a little bit of a love triangle, I think, between Cassian, Azriel, and Moore. And I am here for finding out what's happening there because I think Azriel is like no couple,
Pining.
whereas Tamlin I don't think he would care. But
Yeah. Azriel is pining for some more. Yeah.
and I think Moore is too.
We shall see in the second half what's going on with Moore. We know she's very strong willed and no one is going to control her or influence her. She's going to do what she wants. And so
She's
we'll see.
Nesta-like.
She's very Nesta-like in that way. This is true. But I think the first 32 chapters of the book ends with them making it to Summer Court, right? Or they actually
Yes.
get FaceTime with Tarquin. Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I read that 10 minutes before this
Super
recording
fast.
too, and I forgot about it. So yes, they go to the Summer Court, and there was a mention at the very, very end of a war between the Night Court and Tamlin's Court, the Spring Court, because they hinted at that the Night Court stole Feyre, which according to the law, she has to be given back. She's not a human person or a person, doesn't have the right to leave Tamlin after she said yes to being married. And she's like, no, it's my choice. And they're like, well, that doesn't matter. The law says this. And Brees is getting a little peevy. He's like, okay, you want to start a war? You lay your hands on her to take her back to him, and there will be problems. I will obliterate the person who does that. And they're like, and Tarquin's like, well, don't threaten me in my court. And Reese is like, it wasn't a threat, it was a promise. And Feyre's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I can take care of myself. Or she makes some offhanded comment that we will not be going to war.
She de-escalates it so smoothly. And Reese is
Yes.
just like, yeah, that's kind of that's my girl type of thing. Yeah.
Yes.
But this whole conflict with Tarquin with, oh, we should return Feyre because that's what, the rules say. It's like, okay, where did he get this from? Has he been in communication with the Spring Court? We haven't been able to see Tamlin. We have no idea what Tamlin is doing.
Well, and it wasn't even him. It was Cressida or the princess of the Summer Court. And he's like, okay, let's just shut up about war, okay? Let's not bring it on ourselves. Let's not put it on somebody else. Just shush. And then Feyre, de-escalated it. And both Tarquin and Reese are like, yeah, okay. She's got some fire, but also some tact with that fire.
She can play politics, or at least can learn politics.
Yeah.
So I think this is a lot of setup for the last half. And any theories or things that you'd like to see more of?
Well, I want to see more of her and Reese because
of course.
I want that. I want to see less of her and Tamlin because we got some spicy scenes with her and Tamlin, but I just don't like Tamlin very much. I think he's very all about himself, whereas she's all about him, and she's making a lot of concessions to keep him happy, whereas I don't think he's making any concessions to keep her happy. And I don't like that. It's a two-way street.
That's fair.
But I see Reese making a lot of concessions and her making a lot of concessions and acknowledging that maybe he's not all bad. So I like them together. And then I want to see more of Moore and Cassian and Azriel because I want to figure out what the fuck's going on there. And then I also want to see more of Amarin. I want to figure out more of what she is because I think that there's something big coming with that one. And then I have a feeling we're going to see them get the book. I don't know if it's going to be in this one, but they're going to get the book and then there's going to be some sort of conflict.
Yes. We know there's some kind of conflict with Hybern coming. We
Mhm.
also know, I think there was a very brief scene with some shit going on at the Illyrian camp because some temples were being sacked and there was just some drama going on at the Illyrian camp. So Reese was having to go, figure out what the hell's going on.
That's the people stealing the little feet of the cauldron, and we figured that out in the bone carvers layer.
Hmm.
And so they're putting the cauldron back together
Yes.
because the three temples that were sacked were the three temples that hid the cauldron like feet.
We can also suspect that Ianthe is going to come back. I mean, it wouldn't be this major memory with Rhysand, and she wouldn't be a part of Spring Court
Mhm.
doing whatever counseling kind of shit she's doing. So she has to be in some way tied to the stuff going on with the temples. So
Mhm.
we'll see what exactly is going on there. Maybe. Do you have a favorite of the bad boys yet?
Reese,
Yeah.
because I like he's like a mixture of Az and Cassian. Like I like the like snarky, sarcastic, like I'm willing to get in your face, like just a jab at you. But then like that's Cassian, obviously. But then Az brings in like the like he'll think about like what you actually want, what you need. Like he's the more like soft, thoughtful version. And I think Reese is like a little bit of both. And so I like Reese. Plus, I don't know, it's really gross, but I like the fact that he has so much power and he can just like be like, snap, you're liquid.
Splat.
Yes.
And do you like that he can just fly you around too?
Well, all three of them can. So like
Yeah.
that's not like I mean, between him and Tamlin, yes, that would be one thing that he has over Tamlin. Like so far, Tamlin can like grow claws and lock you in a house.
We do
Which,
know
like,
Tamlin is one of the most powerful High Lords, though. I don't know if that
mhm.
means like physically or what. Because besides the shielding, has he ever done anything besides like brute strength, like Hulk type
Mm-mm.
strength? Yeah.
No.
I don't know. I can't remember.
But I also really, really like Lucian. So I wish Lucian wasn't on Tamlin's side. And I wish like he's very much like KL for me. Like like I like him as a person if he wasn't so marred with loyalty to somebody I don't like.
He also is he the one that warned Feyre that she's probably going to want to keep it under wraps, that she might have gotten some of this power from his dad because his dad will not be happy about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and Tamlin had warned her to keep all of it under wraps because people would be after her, which is why I didn't know if he was really doing it for her best interest or doing it for his best interest so that he could keep her to himself. And I'm leaning more towards the latter on that one, but
Do you think Elaine gets married?
no.
It seems to be like marriage and kids and keeping up with an estate. That seems to be very much like what she's interested in doing. You know what I mean?
I don't see her married for long because I see her being pulled into Feyre's life and her husband being the son of somebody that hates the Fae. Like Feyre won't be able to be around her sister anymore. And I don't see that that settles very well for her. So if she does get married, I don't see it lasting.
And then the father is still off doing like merchant shit, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Until summer.
Huh? Well, we have 30 some chapters left. So we will see next week.
Yeah. I'm tired, Sandra.
I know.
You're making me read so much.
Get back at it.
And I'm supposed to remember all this crap.
I think you're going to enjoy talking about the second half of the book very
Is there
much.
spicy scenes by your face? I think that there's some spicy scenes.
I'm an open book. You know me.
Sandra teases me about liking the spicy scenes, but I think Sandra is secretly, closetly, or whatever. What was it that they used to ask us? Like, are we closet freaks?
Yes,
I
and
think
we had
Sandra
no idea
really
what that meant.
like in the closet about her enjoyment of these spicy scenes.
I feel like I haven't really been hiding it, but whatever. You just choose
Well, you
not
tease
to like
me
talk
about it, like you aren't also in the same boat.
I can't wait to hear what you think of. We'll talk about 2 specific chapters in the second half of the book. So
Okay, you already have the chapters down. Did you
yes.
like do your color coding, like, okay, pink is for the sexy time, and green is for like lines I like. So these chapters are color coded.
I mean,
Did you?
no, I didn't. Not in this book.
Show me your book. No.
Look, I only have 2.
Okay. And they're not color coded,
No,
guys.
but I fully expect you to be texting me when you get to these parts.
Oh yeah, I did not do a good job of texting you this time.
It's okay. It's okay.
I read it very quick. It was
did
all I
read
could
it
do to
quickly.
take my own little notes. Like, okay, something happened.
I mean, this is such a fun book in the series. Like, once you finish this book, you're going to think so differently of like the very first book in the series. I mean, you already feel that way, I'm sure. But anywho, so
I like your cover of the book better than my cover.
it's just gray with the.
I like the gray and the like teal color.
I like the bright colors.
We can just trade books, apparently.
Anywho, if you enjoyed this discussion of A Court of Mist and Fury, chapters 1 through 32, feel free to hop on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a rating or a review if you have an extra time. You can find us at Story Darlings on any social media platform or storydarlings.com. And then tune in next Monday for the second half of the book. So thanks for joining us on our ACOTAR read along, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.